Hello dear students, welcome back to EduHunt video lecture series, and we have been discussing about the spinal nerves. Human being consists of 31 pairs of spinal nerves. Out of 31 pairs, we have 8 pairs of nerves, spinal nerves in the neck region, and 12 pairs in the thoracic region, 5 pairs in the lumbar, 5 pairs in the sacral, and only 1 pair in the caudal region. And altogether we have 31 pairs of spinal nerves. And then each spinal nerve is consists of 2 roots, afferent, efferent, that is sensory root, or the dorsal posterior root, ventral anterior root called the motor root. Anyway, we have discussed these things in the previous session. Let us discuss the remaining details of the spinal nerves. And the first spinal nerve and the last cranial nerve, which have the same name in the human being, called the hypoglossal nerve. The first spinal nerve and the last cranial nerve, that is the hypoglossal nerve. The name of the last cranial nerve is also named as hypoglossal nerve. The last spinal nerve, that is the caudal nerve. Last spinal, I am mentioning here the first one. First one is the hypoglossal nerve, which is the common name to the last cranial nerve and the first spinal nerve. But the last spinal nerve, that is the caudal region, in the caudal region, and that is called the coccygeal nerve. Coccygeal nerve is the last cranial nerve of the human being. And these nerves, they transmit the signals. What are these signals? What are these impulses? What are these reflexes? All perform and all coordinate together, and they finally they cause the reflexes. How they cause reflexes and how the action is generated, let us see. That is reflex action, we call it. And it is an involuntary, without intention, without that is unwantedly, it is an involuntary and autonomic response, that is automatic, spontaneous, automatic response to a stimulus. For example, if there is anything that is sharp object that is like a spine, if we put our foot on a spine, immediately we take off our leg back. So that is an involuntary reaction, an automatic and sharp reaction. Quickly it happens. Without knowing, we take back our leg. That is called the involuntary reaction. And involuntary reactions are the path of that involuntary reaction, that is reflex action, is the reflex arc. Reflex arc is the pathway of that action, reflex action. Reflex action occurs through the pathway called the reflex arc. And what are the components of the reflex arc? Let us see. That is the sensory structure. Sensory structure, that is the receptor organ to which the signals, by which signals are taken. For example, skin. Skin is our sensory organ. Skin, nose, eyes, all these sensory organs are the receptors. Sensory structures are the receptors for the signals. They receive the signals. And then second one is the afferent or the sensory neuron. Sensory neurons must be there in the reflex arc. The reflex arc is nothing but the pathway of the reflex action. This pathway must consist of sensory structure, that is the sensory organ, and the afferent or the sensory neuron. Sensory neuron, even it must have the along with sensory, motor neuron must be there. Interneuron, that is association neuron, will be there, and efferent, that is motor neuron, should also be there, and effector organ, that is where this signal to be transmitted, that is effector organ. For example, in this case, muscle or gland. Which muscle has to be taken? Which gland has to release, or which gland has to respond to this stimulus? These are the components of the reflex arc. It may not be necessary for some type of reflexes, but 1, 2, 4, 5 must be there for any type of reflexes. And in monosympathetic reflexes, the interneurons, as I mentioned, interneuron, that is association neurons, are absent, and the minimum number of neurons that participate in such reflexes is 2. 2, that is afferent and efferent. These are not the neurons. Sensory structure is an organ, that is sense organ, and effector is the organ or the gland or the muscle. So these are not the neurons. Only neurons are the efferent, and efferent are the neurons. These 2 neurons will participate for a monosympathetic reflexes. As I mentioned, that this may not be present, but these 2 neurons must participate in conducting the reflex arc, participate in the reflex arc, that is to pass the signal. For example, knee jerk. Knee jerk is a monosympathetic reflex which has 2 neurons. It's a pathway conduction. And types of reflexes. There are simple reflexes, that is unconditioned reflexes. Unconditioned reflexes. These reflexes are regulated through the spinal cord, that is central nervous system, and participation of the brain is not essential. Simple, they are simple and unconditioned. So brain may not be there, brain may not participate in conducting these signals, but the spinal cord must participate in the conduction of the signals. If by the process of pithing in frog, that is the separation of the brain from the frog, the brain is disconnected from the spinal cord. Such reflexes do not disappear. So if they disappear, we can say that brain role is there, but that kind of signals do not disappear. That means without involvement of the brain, without participation of the brain, these sensory neurons alone can transmit the signals called the simple or unconditioned reflexes. The example is blinking reflexes and pupillary reflexes, and withdrawal reflexes. I mentioned that when we put our leg on a spine, that is mullu మీద కాలేసి అనుకోండి, immediately we take back our leg. That kind of reflexes. And knee jerk reflex, all these type of reflexes, even blinking of eyes. If something is coming towards our eye, we suddenly we close without knowing, without any signals, we just close our eyes. So this kind of reflexes are the simple reflexes. The increase in heartbeat after hearing a louder voice or louder sound is also a kind of simple reflex, and the reflexes like sneezing, coughing, even vomiting and swallowing are all included in this category. That is simple kind of reflexes. And the second type of reflexes are conditioned reflexes. First one is the unconditioned reflexes, where brain may not carry out the signals. In the conditioned reflexes, participation of the brain is essential. This is very, very important. And these reflexes require prior learning or training. Without training, we cannot respond to that stimulus. That is, the pathway of these reflexes pass through the cerebrum. Cerebrum, that is the anterior part of the first part of the brain. Such reflexes may disappear and reappear because the brain is participating. That is why sometimes they disappear and again they participate, they appear. Ivan Pavlov, a scientist which worked on a psychological and some reflexes, how the action of how the response to some reflexes were studied by Ivan Pavlov, and he was known as the father of conditioned reflexes, and he discovered conditioned reflexes for food in dogs. I'll mention that in the next session. And typing, swimming, dancing, knitting, driving, cycling, all these we need training. Without training, we can't do these actions or acts. So these are the two different types of reflexes. One is the unconditioned or the simple reflex, and second type of reflexes are the conditioned reflexes. In simple reflexes, brain may not participate, but the spinal nerves participate and conduct the reflexes, conduct the signals. And in case of conditioned reflexes, brain will participate, brain must be there and it must carry out the signals from effector, from the sensory organ to the effector organ. Anyway, I hope you have understood the concept of conditioned and unconditioned reflexes. In the next session, we will discuss about the third type of nervous system, that is autonomous nervous system. Goodbye.